Welcome to the Artist Advisory Hotline, the podcast for artists who want valuable guidance and honest answers on how to grow their careers and develop their new project from leading art world experts and artists. Here's your host and founder of the Artist Advisory, Marina Press Granger. Tune in as she gets you the answers you deserve.
Hello, artists. I'm your host, Marina Granger, and today we're going to do an episode where I answer some of your questions. So I posted on Instagram and on Threads to see if anyone had any questions for me, and we have some very, very good ones that I'm going to address today. And I got to tell you, I am hoping that the sound is okay. I am tuning in from Fire Island, New York. I am here on this beautiful island that is like so magical. I don't know if you guys have been here, but there's like bamboo growing everywhere and it's on the beach and it's just beautiful. But I'm here with my best friend for her 40th birthday celebrating. So it's just so much fun. So let's dive into these questions. So the first question is from Instagram, from Lalo Muse. And they're asking, what is the best way to break into the gallery scene and the best way to get numbers on social media? And by numbers, I am sure you mean high view counts and followers and things like that, right? Not actual phone numbers. But all right, so first of all, let's address the gallery question, which I really think social media ties into. So first and foremost, it's important that you figure out which galleries are for you. And the way that you do that is you figure out which niche you are in. Like the art world is divided into so many different pockets. There's like a special space for painterly paintings by women, for example, and there's a special space for realism and feminist art and so on and so forth. So you want to make sure that you are finding the right galleries and also think about the price point behind it. So a lot of people might tell you to first start local and see which gallery in your area would make sense for you. But what's really important, I think, is to understand all the different niches. So my recommendation of finding that is looking into art fairs. And so, for example, there is a something called Miami Art Week, where there are so many different art fairs. And basically, you can find out which one makes sense for you. And the beautiful thing about art fairs is there are several galleries exhibiting, more than several, like hundreds of galleries exhibiting under one roof for a very short period of time. And chances are they're attracting similar collectors. So you can start to look into those galleries that are showing at these fairs. So start to think like what fair would make sense for you. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to take a peek at your work and suggest some fairs for you. So first of all, let me say, Lalo, like your work is amazing. So thank you. It's lalo.the with an A dot muse at Instagram. Or on Instagram. So I think first and foremost, check out art galleries that are showing at fairs like Untitled, Nada, and also Context Art Miami, which might be like a little bit, Context Art Miami might feel a little bit less competitive, but it would be a good start for you. And similarly with Scope. So look at the galleries that are showing at these fairs and see what you vibe with. So check them out. And once you do figure out which galleries you're into and which kind of like niche you fall into, what I would suggest you do is you start to engage with these galleries on social media. And the best way to do that is to respond to their stories and their posts genuinely. And the way that you get into the right headspace about this is you want to make it clear to them that this isn't a competitive thing, right? So don't ever feel like you're competing with another artist who may be showing at that gallery or interested in that gallery. The idea here is to be super confident in your work so that you can lift up other artists in your niche, because ultimately what you're doing is you're sharing a message, you're communicating something super important with your work, and it's important to uplift other artists. So similarly, like, you will follow or engage with these galleries on social media by like responding to their stories or their posts. You want to also find other artists who are working in a similar way to you, whether it's the message that is similar or the style or the subject matter, and uplift them by sharing their work in your stories. You never want to share I mean, very rarely would I say, would you ever want to share other artists' work in your feed, right? Because you wanted your actual Instagram feed to feel like it is your like mini portfolio, an example of what you do. So, what I would say is share their work in your stories and say, like, beautiful painting by so and so, or wonderful drawing, so inspiring by whatever, so and so showing at blah, blah, blah gallery, right? So, this is a really good and very kind, warm way to engage on social media and start to literally break into the gallery scene. I want you to see it as, these are all your colleagues. You're all sharing a similar message and you're amplifying each other's messages. And organic connections happen this way, right? You also, to get more numbers, as you say, on social media, what you can do is, first of all, look at the posts. And I'm saying this with the idea in mind that Instagram has changed their algorithm or algorithms. There's more than one algorithm, and it's really, really complicated now. It's much more difficult to get the same number of views on your reels and your posts as you would before. And the main reason for this is that when they test your content, whatever you post, they used to show it and test it to a larger part of your audience, but now they show it to a way, way smaller part of your audience. And if they respond positively to it, then it's going to get, on and on and like on the Explore page, and so many people will see it and you'll get those numbers. So, the way that you want to do this, I'm going to give you two bits of advice. There's so much more here, but first and foremost, you want to see what your audience is interested in, right? So, look at your previous posts and see what the ones with the high numbers have in common. Are you showing a certain type of work? Are you showing your work in an exhibition space? Are you in the actual post? And the reason for this is people come to your account because it's like a specialty, right? What you do. I actually heard somebody use this analogy in one of their like free master classes. It was actually Pink Sparrow Official, if you follow them on Instagram. This is really, really interesting. She's got a class called Reels Academy, which is not specifically for artists, but I thought this analogy was so brilliant. And she said, you want to think about your Instagram account like a restaurant. And if people go there and they get like the best slice of pizza, they're going to want to come back for a slice of pizza. They're not going to want to come back for sushi, for example, right? So, what you want to do is stay consistent in the kind of content that you post. And while your work can remain consistent, what is important is that visually it all makes sense together, that either the message or the palette or the type of post that you're making, that your followers like, that you're always posting that sort of thing. So look to see what posts have done well before and create posts that are like that. Now, the other bit of advice I want to give you, and this is really about reels. So recently, and I can't say I remember to do this every time I post a reel, but recently I realized that there are two little reel hacks that I want to share with you that really work. So when you're posting a reel, create the reel and save it to your phone before posting it. And then go onto your Explore page and start scrolling. And when you find the audio that you want to use, and you want to use an audio that has a little arrow next to it pointing up. So it's a reel that's using an audio that you want to use with the little arrow pointing up, meaning that it's trending. And this, when it's trending, Instagram is pushing that content. What you want to do is tap on that little arrow and that audio and click use audio in the next screen. And what that makes Instagram think is that you're spontaneously creating a reel, but you already created it. You're spontaneously finding the audio, really. Or maybe you know what audio it is and you've been searching, right? But it rewards you for spontaneously making a reel. So even though you already spent that time making the reel, you saved it to your phone. What you want to do is scroll on your Explore page, find the audio, tap on it, and then upload the reel that you made. And Instagram will reward you for this. It'll give you a few more brownie points and push out your reel a little bit more. Now, the other thing that you need to understand is that hashtags are so 2019, right? And what you can do is really play in with Instagram's new feature where they are cataloging all the words you're using in your reel or in your content, in your caption, to push your content to the right audience. So, what you want to do is think about what your target audience is searching for, whether it's the themes in your work, whether it's literally good art, right? And what you want to do is before you post your reel, for example, you want to type out all of this on your reel, like type out all the words like good art, art to buy, or art that I like, right? And then maybe some themes in your work like bathtubs or like actual things, art with bathtubs, women taking baths, or whatever it is. And you want to squeeze down that text super, super tiny so that nobody ever sees it, but the Instagram algorithm will be able to read it. And you want to shove it somewhere in your reel where it's literally invisible, but Instagram will be cataloging this, so it'll be good for them, right? So these are both really good questions, Lalo, and I wish you so much luck. I hope that you find my answer helpful. So next, we have a question from Susie Wen. So, hi, Susie. Thanks for this one. So she's asking, how many artworks do I need to go public for the first time as an emerging artist? Okay, so this one might shock you. Oh, some of the things that I've heard are artists telling me like, oh, I hear that I need to have like 15 artworks to get to even be considered for a gallery show. So, no, absolutely not true. And so the short version of this answer is 3 to 5 artworks, right? 3 to 5 artworks. And let me elaborate the long version of this answer. So it's super important that your artworks are cohesive together and they fall under the intention behind your work so that it's very clear why you're making the work, how your perspective informs the work, right? And that visually they all tie together, whether they're using the same palette or the same style. It's important that everyone can look at your artwork and be like, oh, that's a Susie Wen. And so that's really at the core of this, right? As long as they're cohesive and they look like they're by the same artist and about this like a similar theme, underlying theme, which is really rooted in how your perspective, meaning like how your identity, how your history, something you've gone through has informed your work. That's when you're fully ready to come out as an emerging artist. But here's the thing, I don't want you to wait till it's 100% perfect. the sooner you do it, the sooner you can adjust it, right? And don't be so hard on yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time you put it out there. The most important thing is that you actually put it out there, because while you might think that whatever you're putting out is at like 40%, right? Or 60%, or maybe you're super happy with it, which is really great. But if you're being hard on yourself, don't do that, because your 40% could be somebody else's 100%. And if, like I said, if it's perfect the first time you do it, you waited too long. So just do it. But I want to elaborate a little bit more. Generally, when artists are being considered by a gallery, very rarely are they offered a solo show right away. And the reason for that is because the gallery tends to consign one or two works to see if it will sell to their audience first. They will consign the work either for a group show or to have in their, back room to show people. And then if that work sells and they also use this early consignment to test the waters with your pricing. If that happens, then they will be very likely to take on more work from you. And I have worked with artists who are so meticulous in their artwork. Sometimes it takes them a whole year to make 3 artworks, right? And that's totally fine. So you don't have to rush. There's literally, I want to say hundreds of thousands of art galleries are out there, if not millions. And you can find a gallery that is right for you, right? And generally, just know you really don't need 15 artworks to start. I have worked with several artists, Teresa Barnard, who's just on the podcast, who literally had, I think, I want to say, okay, I think she had like 3 artworks before she started getting so much traction. And these were artworks that she really truly, like, she found her voice, artistic voice, and it got out there. But really, let's just say 3, and it's so important to work to find your voice as an artist. And that one of the best resources for that is that's free, for example, is the previous episode on this podcast that I did with Christy Gordon. So listen to that, and she talks about finding your artistic voice, and any other episodes where I talk about your intention, the intention behind your work. So hopefully that helps you, Susie. Thank you so much for this question. And I apologize if I didn't get your name pronunciation correct, but hopefully I did. Let me know. Okay. So our next question is from Stephanie. And Stephanie is asking, do you aim specifically at New York City artists or artists working everywhere? I'm in the UK. So thank you for asking. So I work with artists from all over the world. I've worked with artists from New Zealand, from China, from just about everywhere in Europe, including Malta, and all over the US. And so I think that it's very much the art world is very much a global economy, and everything that I present to you inside my course, for example, the Artist Academy, or everything that I talk about on this podcast can be applied globally. And yeah, so we're global. And I got to tell you, I recently, I think a big part of your space, like your actual space, can help you manifest anything. You can use your home as a vision board. And I remember putting down the intention to work with artists all over the world into like my journal. And I was thinking, okay, how do I like show this? I'm going to put a globe in my office to like kind of and put the intention forth that I want to work with clients from all over the world. And once I did that, I got a client from China and a client from Australia. And it was just like, So fun. So yeah, that's a big part of my intention. I'm also like a Sagittarius, and travel is a big deal for me. So when I work with clients from all over the place, it feels like I'm traveling every day. All right. Next, we've got a question from Caroline, which is a really good question. All right, so this is pretty important. So she's saying, when an open call application asks, has this work been shown before? Does Instagram count? So, first and foremost, no, Instagram does not count when it comes to this, right? And usually it'll say, has this work been exhibited before, right? So that really means exhibitions. So if it hasn't, then great, right? And you can say no. But if it has, you can follow the steps in the application. Now, where is this kind of confusion coming from? Generally, when you have a solo show coming up, a gallery might tell you, hey, don't release any of the works on Instagram. Don't show them in full on Instagram. You can show details, but don't show the full finished artwork because we want to give a true preview to our list of collectors. Okay, so that's where this, I think, confusion truly comes in. That you don't want to show, there are certain galleries that will advise you when you're working with them not to show your work on Instagram in full uh, if you have a show coming up or if it's going into a group show or something like that. But they will specifically tell you. So you don't have to kind of like wonder about that. Okay, cool. So next question is from Kim. Kim is saying, how do you feel about stray pencil lines in paintings? They drive me nuts. Okay, so I think that art is subjective, and something that you might think is absolutely horrendous, somebody else will find so beautiful. And so the most important thing is that you make work that you are proud of, that makes you happy, because it's important to stay true to yourself. At the end of the day, you report back to yourself. So don't ever make work that is going to please someone else just because it's popular or whatever, or that stray pencil lines are terrible, right? Personally, I do not mind stray pencil lines if the uh, actual artwork, I'm guessing it's like two-dimensional, and if it's colorful, as long as it's a high chroma painting, meaning like super saturated color, then I totally don't mind those stray pencil lines. I won't even see them. As a matter of fact, I think I have some paintings that have stray pencil lines, like paintings that I own, and I'm totally cool with it. But here's the thing, Kim, if you're not into them, then you can edit them out of your work. But also, my advice to you is don't focus so much on others' work and judging it so hard, or maybe not so hard, or judging it at all, because this is not a competition. The best way to think about this is as not being competition, like not being into a competition with other artists, is you're always when you walk into a museum, sure, there could be solo exhibitions going on, but when you really look into the history of art, there are many artists representing history, right? It doesn't have to be just one. So you don't have to be competitive. But I understand that you want to be on the level that you're at with people on your level. And that means niching down or niching down and finding that pocket of the art world that is for you. Cool. So hopefully that super long and roundabout answer helps. Okay. Next, we have got a question from Sharon. So Sharon is saying, how can I exhibit an Art Basel this year? So Sharon, I looked at your work a little bit and I did the little like deep dive here, and also shout out to Sharon. She's got a podcast too. So if you're listening to this, if you want to be, if you're looking for new podcasts, this one looks pretty cool. It's called Turbocharge Your Soul with Sharon Schurter. I really hope I'm pronouncing your last name properly. Okay, so how can you exhibit at Art Basel? So Art Basel, I'm guessing you're talking about Miami Art Week, which is usually the first or second week. It's in December, in early December in Miami. And these fairs there's like tons and tons of art fairs that originated around the main fair, which is Art Basel Miami Beach. Now, Art Basel Miami Beach, that's not the first place this fair popped up. In the 70s, I think it started there in 1973, but I could be wrong. Or actually, I think I am wrong. It started there a little bit later. In its original iteration, which it still does, it's in Basel, Switzerland, and it started in the early 70s over there. And since then, it's become a global thing where Art Basel is an art fair that has hundreds of galleries exhibiting under one roof for like a week all over the world. So they have it in Miami, Hong Kong. I don't know. I mean, I get these notifications, they're like everywhere. In Basel, Switzerland, I feel like maybe it's going to Korea next. But anyway, so every year for a very long time, it's been in Miami in the early part of December. And since then, so many other art fairs have also been exhibiting at the same exact time in Miami. And it's kind of an amazing experience to go and see these things. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to do a 2-day workshop, which I will post soon on my website. You can start to register for it. It's IRL, like in real life in Miami, where I take you to all the not all the fairs, but we go to a couple of art fairs and really learn how to connect, how to go to art fairs as an artist and learn more about the industry and where you fit in and how to fit in, right? And last year when I did it, afterwards we went on an amazing boat ride to celebrate, and it was like so much fun. Okay, so but anyway, but back to your question. So there are also art fairs in Miami. So I know you don't work with a gallery, but there are art fairs that are also in Miami that you can apply to as a solo artist. So there is Red Dot Art Fair and Spectrum Art Fair. And I'm sure that every year there's another one that happens, right? And there's also Satellite Art Fair, which is more about installations rather than two-dimensional work. But what's wonderful about these fairs is that you can get exposure as a solo artist and you can go to these fairs and show your work. What is a little bit tough is the attendance isn't always amazing like it is for Art Basel, the main fair, or some of the bigger fairs like Art Miami, NADA, Untitled, or Scope during this time, right? Because I just checked the website for like Red Dot, and they have maybe close to 100,000 people coming to their art fair that week, which is a huge, wonderful crowd. And it would definitely benefit you because you would at least get a bunch of emails, if not a bunch of sales, right? So that is one way to do it. But if you have ever worked with a gallery before, what I would advise you to do is reach out to the gallery and ask them if they would be interested in applying to show at one of the art fairs in Miami with you, because it would be good exposure for the gallery and it would be easier for you because you wouldn't have to be in the booth the whole time. because the gallery is going too, right? One of the things that we don't think about is like, oh, when we're showing at an art fair solo or an art event, we generally are the only ones in the booth. Or, I mean, you could hire someone. I would advise you to pay them a commission-based fee, right? So that they're more inclined to make sales, but also a base fee. Um, so if, there's two ways kind of to do this. But I want to say and give a shout out to Superfine Art Fair, which I've had the founders of the fair on this podcast. It was like the second ever episode I did. I think it was like the second episode. And you can scroll back and check and listen to it. But they are really good at marketing and getting people in through the door. And they do art fairs all over the US, including Miami, but they don't do it during Basel week because there's too much competition. And so that there's like too many people going to all the other fairs and they want the work to sell. So their art fair is in Miami in February this year, in February 2024. So you can apply to that as a solo artist, and they give you uh, so many resources. They also have a podcast called, I think it's the Art Business Podcast. I've been on it twice, and the third episode is actually coming out on that podcast. I really would advise you to take a look at all the options because if you do Spectrum or Red Dot, sure, you're going to get a lot of exposure. But just to give you an idea, there's like probably 100,000 people going to the main fair at Art Basel every day, as opposed to 100,000 people attending Spectrum or Red Dot altogether. But that's not to say you can't have a positive and enriching and wonderful experience doing that. I think it's definitely worth a shot because it's better to do it than always wonder what if, right? So, yeah, hope that helps. And our last question today is from Megan, and it's basically about me and my taste. So she's saying, would love a roundup of artists you love. Okay, so this is kind of hard because I I was like, this is the hardest question because I love so much art. Um, and I gotta start, I guess I'm gonna say I what really made me fall in love with art history or art from the past rather, and made me pursue a graduate degree in art history was the Northern Renaissance painters like Jan van Eyck, Roger van der Weyden, and Hieronymus Bosch, who's a little bit later on, but still falls into the category of Northern Renaissance. I am obsessed with these artworks, and one of my favorite artworks is actually by Robert Campin, and it's on the view or on view in the cloisters, which is a part of the Met Museum here in New York City. And it is the Marode altarpiece. I absolutely love it. So if you're in New York, go take a look at this beautiful painting and all the other works in the cloisters, which are stunning. But I have to tell you that as we move further along in history, I'm really into painters like Hilma af Klint, who I was totally mesmerized by when I saw the solo exhibition for her work at the Guggenheim in New York. I really like artists like Leonora Carrington. Anything that's kind of like mystical is really interesting to me. But spiritually speaking, I gotta tell you, I feel like there is so much spirituality and so much art. And, we can't overlook Kandinsky, who literally wrote a book about called On Spiritual or On the Spiritual in Art and really influenced is it Peggy Guggenheim to open up the Guggenheim Museum. So it would be like a temple of spirituality a temple for art, right? Which I think is so magical. And now I'm like, wait, why am I not a member of the Guggenheim yet? I have to join. I have, I mean, it's so interesting. Anyway, that's a whole different episode. But right now, there's certain artists that I really, really love. And I'm just going to give a shout out to a small handful of them. Uh, Jen Dwyer, who I know listens to this podcast. I'm obsessed with her work and have been for a long time. Teresa Barnard, Alana Farrell, and Jenna Gribben. I absolutely love your work. And there's so many more artists as well. So, I mean, I'm going to get myself into a spiral talking about all of them. So, anyway, thank you so much for your wonderful questions today. And thanks for hanging out with me. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for listening. Support your community by sharing this podcast, leaving a review, and follow The Artist Advisory on Instagram at @the_artist_advisory, and visit us online at www.theartistadvisory.com.